Week 4 is over, which means we are now officially 1/4 of the fantasy season through. So yes, it is time to provide my rest of season updated rankings for the wide receiver position in fantasy football, as it's been requested to do for many weeks. So we're going to go through that today. Just make sure to go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support, because I'm doing everything I can to help bring us all a title in 2025 fantasy football. Now, before I get into it, just want to reiterate, these are rest of season rankings, not week 5. And I say that knowing that I'm going to have to address at least one Yahoo who goes down there in the comments and says, this player's not even playing in week 5. But let's get into our first tier, which is Puka Nacua at number 1 and Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 2. These two guys, it's very exclusive. I am old enough to remember that back during the offseason, when I was having Puka Nacua ranked above Justin Jefferson and other top tier guys, I was met with utter outrage, saying, how could you rank Puka Nacua over these guys? If it's not clear by now, I don't know when it will be clear. Puka Nacua is doing league-winning stuff this year. I mean, listen, Matt Stafford has a history of doing league-winning types of numbers with wide receivers in fantasy football. This is this year's Cooper Kupp right here. Triple Crown winner. The guy is destroying everybody in targets. He's destroying everybody in production, and he just got his first touchdown this past week. Puka Nacua is easily the number 1 wide receiver moving forward in fantasy football. And Amon-Ra St. Brown at 2 is a great option as well. Listen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I said this also before the season started. I think that this new offensive coordinator, John Morton, would be particularly beneficial for Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, it's been a lot more balanced and looks like a lot more like a Ben Johnson offense than I originally thought it was going to. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is consistently the team's top target. And I will say this, the only concerning number here is that he has 6 touchdowns compared to someone like Puka's, which is at number 1, with 1 total touchdown. So it is definitely a little bit like, well, when those touchdowns stop coming, what will happen? But Amon-Ra St. Brown is still seeing tons of targets. The guy is clearly their number 1, and Jameson Williams just hasn't been that involved lately. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, to me, moving forward, is my number 2 guy. Now, dropping down to our next tier. I can't wait to get in this tier. So many people need to cope with this tier. Jackson Smith-Njigba is at number 3, and Rome Odunze is at number 4. I said this after the Seattle versus Arizona game in week 4. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a superstar wide receiver in the NFL and in fantasy football. Just look at his production so far this year. Now, in a full PPR format, and that's what these rankings are based off of, full PPR. Jackson Smith-Njigba has 34 targets through 4 weeks, 402 receiving yards, and only 1 touchdown, once again, like Puka Nacua, and is a top 6 fantasy wide receiver. This guy has been electric this year. Now, in a half PPR, obviously, he hasn't been as good, much like Puka Nacua, because he's not getting in the end zone. But this guy is seeing so much volume. And it's not only just minimal targets that are just basically at the line of scrimmage. Jackson Smith-Njigba is averaging 15.5 yards per reception this year. That shows us 2 things. Number 1, Jackson Smith-Njigba is a true number 1. He is no longer just this short yardage guy who's like in the slot and he only gets open in these like 5-yard windows. Jackson Smith-Njigba is moving down the field very effectively. And the number 2 thing it shows us is that Sam Darnold is absolutely good enough to provide a wide receiver 1 without Kevin O'Connell as his head coach. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a top 3 wide receiver moving forward, guys. And Rome Odunze, there is no question. I was starting to figure this out like right before the season started that Rome Odunze could easily be this team's number 1 wide receiver. And it's very clear at this point. Like, DJ Moore is not uninvolved and irrelevant in this offense, but DJ Moore's target share is lower than Rome's, number 1. And the work that he gets is just not down the field like it is for Rome. Rome Odunze is averaging 14.8 yards per reception, and he's got 35 targets on the year, and the guy has 5 touchdowns. Well, I'll tell you this. The Amon-Ra St. Brown number of 6 touchdowns is a little bit more concerning because they have so many weapons. Rome Odunze is clearly that best option, not only in the passing game, but on the entire offense. Rome Odunze feels a lot more sustainable to me. It's just that I don't really trust Caleb as much moving forward so much, so I will have Rome Odunze at number 4 because he's an elite option moving forward. CeeDee Lamb is at number 5. And Emeka Egbuka is at number 6. Now, obviously, CeeDee Lamb is not playing in week 5. But here's my thing with CeeDee, right? So he gets a high ankle sprain. And this guy apparently was like saying to people I could play in week 4. Obviously, that was never going to happen 1 week after a high ankle sprain. But I will tell you this, CeeDee Lamb is a tough dude. That played through a shoulder injury all of last year. That was really, really brutal to play through. This is a tough guy who wants to be out there for his team. And you know the moment that he comes back, he will absolutely take precedent over George Pickens as that wide receiver 1. Pickens looks good in the meantime, but George Pickens is nothing compared to CeeDee Lamb as far as Dak's chemistry goes. So Dak, I know that he is good enough to provide elite fantasy upside for a wide receiver. So even if CeeDee Lamb isn't back in week 5 or even week 6, I still want CeeDee Lamb inside my top 5. Now, Emeka Egbuka at number 6, I don't know how many times I have to say this. I will tell you this. I feel like I'm on an island on this one a little bit because I've been getting a lot of people asking me, should I trade Emeka Egbuka for somebody like George Pickens? And it's like, guys, Emeka Egbuka, I'm not sure people are really picking up on what's happening right now. Emeka Egbuka, what he has done through the first 4 weeks is establish a role in an offense with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, very high-end quarterback, by the way, a role that cannot be taken away from him. It can't. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say that. Emeka Egbuka is a first-round pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has looked really good through the first 4 weeks of the season. You cannot look at this situation and just say, oh, yeah, he's just been given, so many opportunities because they had to. Yes, that's true, but this is a first-round draft pick that they want to use, and he has given them no reason to lessen his workload. It blows my mind. People still considering this guy a sell-high candidate. He is not a sell-high unless you are getting ridiculous value in return. Yes, Chris Godwin came back, got a lot of targets in week 4. I understand that, but he is not on the same page with Baker right now, and I don't think that he's as good as Emeka Egbuka. Understand this. This is a legitimate breakout superstar wide receiver. Bottom line, end of story. It's really bizarre, but I hope this starts to clear up people's issues with him and some of their thoughts on where I sit with Emeka Egbuka. He's at number 6. And Rashee Rice at 7 to round out this tier. Look, Rashee Rice, I know that he's still got 2 more weeks to go, but if you look at this Mahomes passing offense this year, it looks a lot similar to how it looked in 2022, the year after Tyreek Hill left. He has not had the greatest weapon cast, but he looks awesome this year. Patrick Mahomes is playing top-tier football this year. So the minute he gets Rashee Rice back, a true number 1 in this offense, I don't see how Rashee Rice isn't an elite fantasy option the moment he steps on the field. And yes, it's different than a guy like CeeDee Lamb in a sense because he's obviously not CeeDee Lamb talent-wise, but it's also different than a guy like Terry McLaurin or Mike Evans. When they come back, they're older players, and I don't know how they're going to look off an injury. Rashee Rice is ready to go, fully healthy, and this guy is just ready to come back into a top-tier passing offense, by the way, in the NFL. I love Rashee Rice moving forward. He's at number 7. Dropping down to our next tier, I've got Nico Collins at 8 and Drake London at 9. Now, with Nico Collins, I would love nothing more than to put him in the next tier above, but I realistically cannot do that right now just based on how this Houston offense is looking. Now, obviously, this video is coming out after week 4, where they just crushed the Tennessee Titans like a bug. I understand all that, but the problem is that this offensive line is just not holding up. I mean, even against the Titans, right? Like the Titans were able to get after CJ Stroud with very big consistency. They're going to play better teams than the Tennessee Titans moving forward, and we all know what the first 3 weeks looked like. And also, Nico Collins is their only option that is actually viable in this offense so far. They have nothing else to throw to. Nobody else is working for them. So Nico Collins is getting double, triple teamed quite a bit. And CJ Stroud can't even deliver it on time accurately most of the time. So Nico Collins, I love him. I think he's an elite top-tier player who could easily give you 30-point games. But I've got no choice but to put him down here at 8 because of all these struggles. Drake London at 9. Obviously, he can play. What a surprise, right? He comes out, has a really good week 4 performance. And obviously, I would love to put him in the above tier as well. Because if you look at the guy's target share throughout the entirety of the season so far, it's been right up there with those guys above him. But I will say again, not sold on Penix so far. I will not take last week against the Washington Commanders and immediately forget about week 3. Week 3, he was so bad. So I'm just still not trusting of this quarterback situation. I know Drake London's really good. I know he's the wide receiver 1 by far, but I still am a little bit worried about the quarterback situation moving forward. And same thing applies to Justin Jefferson. He's at number 10. Listen, guys, he's an elite player. And yes, he did have a really good game in week 4 fantasy football, but it was with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz will not be the quarterback probably for the majority of the season. They will try to use J.J. McCarthy as long as he comes back. I do think that this quarterback situation is such a disaster. And I said this and got mocked and ridiculed for it during the offseason. Well, hopefully people's eyes are open and they're awake now because J.J. McCarthy sucks. Carson Wentz is flat out better than him right now. Now, I don't know if it's going to last and if Carson Wentz is going to start playing bad soon, but he's just flat out better than J.J. McCarthy. So yes, Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver 1. Yes, he's an elite player, but Jordan Addison coming back and performing really well in his first game back, it just muddies it a little bit more. I've got my issues still with Justin Jefferson. Courtland Sutton's at 11 to round out this tier right here, and I like Courtland Sutton quite a bit because I do think Bo Nix, as time goes on, continues to get better. And I'm recording this before the Monday night game versus the Cincinnati Bengals, so he may end up just crushing the Bengals tonight. But I will say, I think Courtland Sutton is in this position to where he's still the same guy that we've always known him as. He will disappear several times during the season and let Troy Franklin or Marvin Mims Jr. get some really good work, and Courtland Sutton's nowhere to be found. But he's also going to give you games like he did against the Chargers in week 3, where it's like, dude, this guy's dominant. Yeah, because he can be. So I like Courtland Sutton. I think he's a really good fantasy option moving forward at number 11. And as some of you may know, I do have my full fantasy football rankings on a weekly basis on FS Roundup when you are a premium subscriber to FS Roundup. But I have a quick question for everybody. Would you rather see me put my rest of season rankings on the site and have it just be that for my rankings? Or do you prefer it to be weekly fantasy rankings on the site FS Roundup? Because it's like 260 players deep. So I just want your opinion. Rest of season rankings for the site or weekly rankings for the site? Let me know. But if you are interested in seeing my full rankings on FS Roundup, you'll join the premium subscription, get access to the waiver wire tool as well, which is saving people's teams in 2025 fantasy football.
This is Ted. Look at him. Ted desperately needs to pick up a new running back, or his fantasy team is toast. For the 3rd year in a row. And losing his season again means one thing.
Oh no.
Don't be Ted. Use Fantasy Football Roundup to automate your waiver pickups and rest easy this season. Huh. Look at him.
Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Deebo Samuel at number 12, and George Pickens is at 13. Now, with Deebo Samuel, this guy is he was like one of my flag plants during the offseason, so it's really cool to see him do really well in fantasy football. Now, obviously, last week, in week 3, he wasn't very good with Marcus Mariota. Then he gets back in the end zone in week 4 because Deebo is looking like the guy that we saw in San Francisco. He is performing really well because he wants a new contract and he's in a new offense that's better fit for him as of this time. So Jaden Daniels is apparently coming back in week 5. I like Deebo Samuel a lot, especially considering the uncertainty with Terry McLaurin's injury. And then with George Pickens here at 13, listen, this may be too high, maybe too low for some. George Pickens is coming off a fantastic Sunday night game against a really good defense, the Green Bay Packers. And again, if CeeDee Lamb, I knew he was going to miss another month, he would be inside the top 10. He would be. But I'm not convinced of that. I don't know where we stand on CeeDee. The guy's a dog. I think he could come back and play. And if he does, George Pickens will have more bummer games like he's put up a couple times this year. Now, I will admit this. I was wrong on Pickens. Pickens looks tremendous this year. I was wrong before the season started, and you'll probably hear me admit that on what I got right and wrong at some point, but I'm admitting it right now. I was definitely wrong, but I'm not ready to say he's top 10 yet because CeeDee will come back and lessen his involvement on a weekly basis soon. Now, Quentin Johnston is at 14, and Jamar Chase is at 15. What a world we live in where we see Quentin Johnston overranked above Jamar Chase. That's 2025 for you because Quentin Johnston, the breakout is very, very real. And if you don't see it at this point, God help you because the guy looks really good. Now, I will say this. As fun as it is to watch the real breakout of Quentin Johnston, it still is a wide receiver room that is very good overall. And I think it's going to be hard to trust moving forward that he continues to be the wide receiver one, because Keenan Allen will have plenty more games where he gets 20 plus points. And I still believe this wholeheartedly. Ladd McConkey will break out at some point. I believe 100% is going to happen. So Quentin Johnston, I like him a lot. I am worried about the Chargers offense as a whole and protecting Justin Herbert because of all their offensive line injuries, but I will say Quentin Johnston, the breakout is very real. So I'd rather have him attached to Herbert than I would with Jamar Chase attached to Jake Browning for the rest of the season. And listen, we're filming this before the Monday night game against the Denver Broncos. They're going to look bad again tonight, but I promise you this. Jamar Chase is still an elite player in this league, and they're not going to look as bad offensively as they did in week 3, and they probably will again versus the Denver Broncos. They will be better. And Jamar Chase can have really big games with Jake Browning. It's just obviously not going to be as consistent and something you can rely on a weekly basis with Jake Browning. So he has to move down, but we're not going to go overboard on this channel and move him down to like 20 or 30 for the rest of the season. Davante Adams is at 16 to round out this tier. And I think Davante Adams is a great fantasy wide receiver too. Like this guy, realistically, NFL wide receiver too. As far as NFL teams' wide receiver twos go, he's the best in fantasy. This guy right now has been awesome because here's the reality with this one. As good as Puka Nacua is, being at my number 1 wide receiver for the rest of the season, Davante Adams doesn't need 10, 12 targets in this offense. He gets those red zone opportunities from Matt Stafford. And Matt Stafford's always on target. And Davante Adams is one of the best red zone targets at wide receiver of my lifetime. So he's still proving to be that to be the case. So yes, Davante Adams still inside this tier along with a bunch of other elite guys as well. Now dropping down to our next tier, I've got Michael Pittman Jr. at 17 and Ricky Pearsall is at 18. Now with Michael Pittman Jr., I did say this before week 4, which is that if they come out and play really well against the Rams defense, I am done doubting Daniel Jones. Now, it was clearly his worst week, but I was proven something. I'm done doubting this one. I think he's this year's Sam Darnold, and therefore Michael Pittman Jr. being the wide receiver one in this offense has to be inside the top 20 because this guy right here has clearly been the wide receiver one in this offense. I was wrong about Josh Downs. It's Michael Pittman Jr. So Michael Pittman Jr. getting the targets that he's getting over the middle of the field, down the field, in the red zone. This guy clearly is very important to this offense, and they look really good right now. So it's kind of disrespectful for me to put him outside the top 20 at this point. But that being said, his ceiling just isn't as high as a guy like Davante Adams because Daniel Jones is still Daniel Jones, and he is not Matt Stafford. Ricky Pearsall at 18. Look, if the guy was not injured, and he wasn't on this injured team with injured quarterbacks and injured everything, he would be higher on this list. I think Ricky Pearsall is having a breakout season, kind of robbed from him with all injuries. He himself is injured. He had a setback with the knee injury. We don't know at this time whether he's going to miss time at all or how much time he misses. But they do play this Thursday night, so I would imagine he's probably not going to play in that game. That being said, this guy is having a breakout season when he is healthy. He's their wide receiver one in this offense, and he looks really good. So as long as Brock Purdy and him can have some healthy games together, I do want him at 18, but I will tell you this, because of all the injuries there, this is a fluid ranking, and I say this again, that doctor in San Francisco needs to be investigated. They have way too many injuries over the years that are just not coincidence anymore. Now, number 19 and 20, I've got Zay Flowers and Keenan Allen. And Zay Flowers, to me, listen, I want to believe in the breakout, and I was big on Zay Flowers, but I will say this, like Lamar Jackson being injured, we don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, Lamar Jackson, hamstring injury, left the game. There was reports that he could have came back and played if it was a closer game, but I did also see John Harbaugh come out and basically sidestep that question. So there's a chance that he misses time. And if that's the case, I'm not as big on Zay, obviously, for obvious reasons. Zay Flowers, even with Lamar, has been kind of minimized in recent weeks. So Zay Flowers kind of back where we started, unfortunately, and he's got to be at 19, while also acknowledging that what we saw in that week 1 game, I do believe can come back. Now, Keenan Allen's at 20. And listen, Keenan Allen, as I said with Quentin Johnston, he'll have games where he takes a backseat to Ladd and Quentin Johnston, as he already has with QJ in particular. But Keenan Allen, I've said this all year, what he's getting is the clutch throws that Justin Herbert used to throw last year. But Keenan Allen's chemistry with Justin Herbert is undisputable. He is his third down safety blanket and his fourth down safety blanket. This guy has done really well. He just doesn't have the upside of always getting in the end zone because he's not the deep threat that QJ is and not the athlete that Ladd is. Xavier Worthy is at 21 of the Kansas City Chiefs. And listen, we missed a really good window there, unfortunately, with Xavier Worthy because of Travis Kelce being an idiot. But the reality is that Xavier Worthy is going to have a role even when Rashee Rice comes back. He will not be their wide receiver one. That is Rashee Rice. But what he will be is a massive big play threat, and he will also get a lot of jet sweep type of options here in a Kansas City offense that's extraordinarily creative with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, who, again, is playing at a legitimate all-pro level right now. He's just not being acknowledged for it. He's playing excellent football, and Xavier Worthy looked good in his week 1 back. So I do think that with Rashee Rice, obviously it changes some things, but we do have this small window of 2 games here where Xavier Worthy could be a top 10 wide receiver. And after that, I think he's a top 25 guy more than a top 20 guy. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Brian Thomas Jr. at 22 and Chris Godwin at 23. Now, listen, with Brian Thomas Jr., I will maintain this. This guy is also in a similar position to Ladd, where at some point he will hit the big time. This guy's target share through 4 weeks is undisputed the number 1 target share in Jacksonville. He is that wide receiver 1 over there by talent, by work, by snap count, by routes run. He is their wide receiver 1. Trevor Lawrence just isn't as good, so I don't trust Brian Thomas Jr. to come back and sustain really good production, but I do know that he will have big weeks sooner than later. It's just impossible not for something to break his way when he's getting that amount of targets. So Brian Thomas Jr., yes, he's not the guy that we once drafted him to be in the second round, in the first round, but I do still believe that we are in a position here to where he's being undervalued to a point where it's just not the reality. So I'm going to set it straight at 23. Chris Godwin at 24. He came back, got tons of targets in his first week back, and I will say this. Him and Baker looked off, which is natural because the guy hasn't played in basically a full year. And also Chris Godwin is in this position to where, again, Emeka Egbuka is legitimately establishing a role that can't be taken away in this offense. So this Mike Evans situation is going to muddy Chris Godwin, I think, more than it muddies Emeka Egbuka. But Chris Godwin, to be clear, in this Tampa offense, he's a top 25 wide receiver. Garrett Wilson's at 24, and Ted McMillan's at 25 to round out this tier. I know I'm fully aware that I'm going to get Garrett Wilson pushback, and I get it, guys. Again, I'm filming this before he plays in week 4, so I might be justified in saying this, or I might look like an idiot when he comes out and does well. I don't know what's going to happen, because the reality is you don't either. Because this guy can give you what he gave you in week 1, and he can give you what he gave you in week 3, but he also can come out and give you what he gave you in week 2. Because the reality is, it's not his fault. It's a quarterback issue, and they will have that the entire season. That's just the bottom line. So you can't rank him much higher than this right here when you've got wide receivers attached to quarterbacks who are just better and offer more upside. Garrett Wilson, the bottom line remains that he is attached to a bad quarterback situation for the entirety of a season, and that's just the unfortunate reality of this one. Ted McMillan's at 25. Listen, he's also attached to a bad quarterback situation as well, which is why he had to drop. But I will say this. I call him a buy low this week because his target share is not disputed. This guy is easily their wide receiver 1. I don't care when Xavier Legette gets back. I don't care when Jalen Coker gets back at this point. It's Ted. And this offense may make a switch from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton. I don't know. But I will tell you this, Ted McMillan is still a really good wide receiver in fantasy because he is talented, number 1. And number 2, this offense is just flat out needs him more than anything else and anybody else in that offense if you want to know the truth. Dropping down to our last tier, I've got DK Metcalf at 26. And yes, Ladd McConkey's still in my top 30. DK Metcalf, here's the problem with this one, right? DK Metcalf should, in theory, be higher on this list because him and Rodgers are working well together. Like, he is becoming a legitimate big play threat, and he is getting in the end zone more than he used to the past couple of years with Seattle. Like, it does look like DK is a better fantasy asset in Pittsburgh than he was with Seattle the last couple of years. But I will also say this. I don't like to project injuries, but Aaron Rodgers gets hit and beaten to a pulp on a gamely basis. And the guy's in his 40s. He can't move anymore, and he's getting beaten and battered on a weekly basis. It's hard for me to see Aaron Rodgers finishing a full season, and if that happens, DK Metcalf's fantasy value it's down in the tubes, man. So I'm playing it a little safe, I guess, with DK at 26 for now. Ladd McConkey at 27. Look, guys, I just said this with both the other Chargers wide receivers. I am fully aware that all of these wide receivers in Los Angeles, not all of them are going to be in the top 30. I'm fully aware of that. But I also will say this, Ladd is going to have big games. If you look at bottom line metrics on FSRoundup.com, the guy is still their wide receiver one by routes run and snap counts. Now, obviously, you'll say to me, well, obviously, it doesn't matter in fantasy. And I would agree with you. But the bottom line is that he will have a big breakout game sooner than later. He's too involved for it to not happen and not have a breakout his way, because targets are there for him on a weekly basis as well. It's going to happen, and I believe that with Justin Herbert, I still would rather have him than I would a bunch of other wide receivers that we'll go through later. And Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown are at 28 and 29. Listen, they're in this weird position right now to where I think it's so eerie in Philadelphia. Somehow they're 4-0, and A.J. Brown is unhappy. That tells me, and I said this on my buy low video for week 5, that I think A.J. Brown is going to get dealt before the trade deadline. And if that's the case, Devonta Smith is going to be higher than this. But right now, I'm going to keep it right here because A.J. Brown, in theory, I think if he gets traded, could have good fantasy value again as well, because he'll probably get traded to a bad team that hyper targets him. But at the same time, right now, I'm going to keep these guys at 28 and 29 because we know the potential of these two guys, but they are obviously not in an ideal situation for either of them right now. I think something's going to change. And at number 30 to round us out, I've got Mike Evans. Now, very similar to the Chargers, not all of these Tampa wide receivers are going to be top 30 guys. I know that. And I will tell you this. I'm worried about Mike Evans. It's not necessarily the play, but the injury with the age concern is adding up to a problem that I can't overlook. Like, Mike Evans has had way too many hamstring injuries throughout his career, and he's going to miss several more games. So I'm worried about Mike. I know what I'm seeing with Emeka Egbuka is real, and I know that we just saw a big target share for Chris Godwin. So I'm just a little worried about Mike, but I still, again, would take him over guys like Chris Olave, unfortunately, who are just attached to worse quarterbacks, when I know Mike's upside is bigger and higher than a guy like Chris Olave's and Jameson Williams. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see Week 5's buy low trade targets for fantasy football, click on this video right here.